What's up, all my wee brothers and sisters? I'm Jeremy Whitson, otherwise known as your anime Oni-san. Now, with the new season of Bleach Thousand Year Blood War in full swing, and the climax of the arc coming in fast, I thought now would be the absolute perfect time to do a deep dive into not only the powers, but the history of all the current captains of the Gotei 13. And what better place to start than with the man who, despite having an extremely frail and disease-rattled body, became one of the strongest and oldest captains in the Sarate, taught by head captain Yamamoto himself, the right hand of the Soul King, Jushiro Ukitake, the captain of Squad 13. A warning, there are going to be massive spoilers for the anime ahead. Now, before we get into things, if you like this video, consider hitting that like button, subscribing, or leaving a comment. Jushiro Ukitake was born over 1,000 years before the beginning of the story. Now, being the oldest brother of 7 siblings, the responsibility of protecting and caring for his siblings should have fallen on Ukitake's shoulders. But around his 3rd birthday, Ukitake would fall ill with a deadly lung disease, which would ultimately cause his hair to turn pure white. Now, I'm not really sure how a lung disease would, cause somebody's hair to turn white, but I'm not a doctor. If I was, I probably wouldn't be talking to y'all about anime. Now, Ukitake had very superstitious parents, and after he was considered a lost cause by the doctors in the Sarate, his parents would take him to the outskirts of the 78th district of Rukongai, where they would pray at the shrine of the fallen god Mimi Hagi. This action would allow Ukitake to grow up and live a somewhat normal life, but little did they know that this would actually prove instrumental in preventing the destruction of the human world, the Sarate, and Wakamundo, but we'll get into that later. Ukitake, along with Shunsoi Kiyaraku, were among the first graduates of Yamamoto's Shino Academy, and the first 2 graduates to achieve the rank of captain. Now, fast forward, we're now approximately 110 years before the beginning of the story, and Ukitake meets and befriends a Soul Reaper by the name of Kaien Shiba, who basically looks like Ichigo and Megumi had an illegitimate child. Now, the wild thing about Kaien is that he's actually the nephew of Isshin Shiba, effectively making him Ichigo's cousin. Ukitake would eventually ask Kaien to be the lieutenant of Squad 13, which Kaien would refuse multiple times before finally giving in and becoming the vice captain of Squad 13. Sometime later, a hollow by the name of Metastasia attacked and killed a squad of Soul Reapers led by Kaien's wife, Miyako Shiba, which threw Kaien into a frenzy, swearing revenge on the hollow. It's actually at this point that Ukitake tried to talk Kaien down, arguing that they knew too little about the unknown hollow, making it too dangerous to go after right now. Obviously, with this being a shonen anime, Kaien refuses to listen and wants to go after the hollow anyways. So Ukitake gives him the only information they have on the hollow, the location of its lair. Now, the next night, it's revealed that the hollow had actually taken possession of Miyako's body and had started to slaughter the Soul Reapers of Squad 13. As the hollow fled the barracks, Kaien begins to pursue, but Ukitake stops him, claiming this could be exactly what the hollow wants. As Kaien declares that the hollow had disgraced Miyako's honor by using her to slaughter Soul Reapers, Ukitake acknowledges this and decides to join Kaien, which, just baffles him, because let's face it, up to now Ukitake has barely been able to move without just throwing up all of his organs. The following night, Ukitake, Kaien, and Rukia, for some reason, head to the hollow's lair, and when they arrive, Kaien asks to face the creature alone, which, Ukitake allowed, being arguably one of the worst decisions in the entire show. But Jushiro knew that Kaien was fighting for his own and Miyako's honor. This actually shows how deeply Ukitake respects the honor and pride of a Soul Reaper, because even though he knows this is a one-sided fight, he forbids Rukia from intervening because it's what Kaien wants. However, not allowing Rukia to fight is, going to prove fatal for Kaien, because shortly after, the hollow is going to take control of his body just like he did with Miyako. It's at this point that Ukitake finally decides to take action and goes to battle the hollow. After a short battle, Ukitake's illness, begins to take over, and he just starts coughing up blood again, which is a surprise to absolutely no one. But because of the battle, Kaien is able to momentarily take back control of his body and impales himself on Rukia's sword, ending his and the hollow's lives, thanking the captain for understanding the value of his honor and that of his wives. Now, we actually don't have a lot of info about the time between Kaien's death and the beginning of the story, but we do know that at one point, Ukitake gave Kubo Ginjo a substitute Soul Reaper badge, which acknowledged him as the first substitute Soul Reaper. Everything was fine for a while until Genjo discovered his badge was actually designed to monitor and suppress his own power, which caused Genjo to hunt down Soul Reapers and absorb their Ryatsu. He then disappeared from Soul Society's surveillance, and he wouldn't reappear for many years. Alright, we're finally at the start of the series. Thank you for bearing with me through that. Now, the first time we actually see Ukitake in the series is when a messenger from Soul Society tells him about the death of Squad 5 Captain Sosuke Aizen. Now, this show being a decade old, we obviously know this isn't true, but this information shocks Ukitake. Jushiro then heads to the center of the Serete, where he stops Byakuya Kuchiki from killing Ganju Shiba, questioning his actions, only to be told that the Soul Society is at war, and special wartime orders have been enacted. After saving a couple more people, Ukitake hears that Rukia's execution date has actually been moved up, so he tries to convince Byakuya to take action. But, Kuchiki, being the emotionless fuckboy we all know he is, seemed extremely uncaring at the situation. This, and the stress of all the events up to now, caused Ukitake to succumb to his illness. It is until later that we actually see Ukitake decide to save Rukia in his own way, heading to Central 46, the bureaucrats of the Soul Society, and requesting their help. After being turned down, Ukitake sets out to help using other means, unsealing the Shohoin shield. Arriving just in the nick of time, Ukitake, along with Captain Kiyaraku, used the Shohoin shield to destroy the Sokyoku, the Zanpakuto used to execute Soul Reapers, saving Rukia's life. As Ukitake and Kiyaraku attempt to flee the scene, they are caught by none other than their former teacher, Head Captain Yamamoto. Now, the battle ends up being extremely short because the 4th Squad Lieutenant Isane Katetsu revealed to all of Serete that Captain Sosuke Aizen was not only alive, but was a traitor to all of Soul Society. Now, this completely shocks Ukitake, and before he leaves, Aizen actually addresses Jushiro, calling him arrogant and saying that he's going to be the one to sit on the throne of heaven. Now, as the Soul Society is recovering from all the events up to now, Ukitake actually thanks Ichigo for saving Rukia's life, and presents him with a substitute Soul Reaper badge, allowing him to hunt down Hollows in the human world. Now, we're going to go ahead and fast forward again, all the way to the Arankar arc. Ukitake had actually been investigating Aizen's motives and attempting to create a Hogyoku, when he came across a document in the Great Spirit Library regarding the Oken, the spirit key to the Soul Palace, the home of the Soul King. Now, once again, we're actually only going to see Ukitake in a couple scenes after this, but we're going to speed ahead to the fake Karakura Town arc, and Ukitake seems prepared to fight Coyote Stark and Lilinet Gingerbuck, two of the Arankar who attempted to invade Karakura Town. Unfortunately, Stark doesn't really have any motivation to fight, so Ukitake takes to meditating on a nearby roof, which is just an extremely ballsy thing to do in the middle of a battlefield. Now, while Shunsui begins to force Stark into a battle, Lilinet asks Ukitake why he won't join in. Because Stark is strong, and if he doesn't, then Kiyaraku will most likely die. Ukitake kind of laughs this off, saying that Kiyaraku is strong too, and that he's just going to pray for his friend's victory. The next scene actually perfectly highlights how kind and gentle Ukitake is. Because even though Lilinet is an Arankar, he tries to persuade her to leave the battlefield, as it's no place for a child. Obviously, Lilinet doesn't take this well, and begins screaming that Arankar are ageless and that she is no child. Ukitake explains that even though she doesn't age, she still resembles a child, and he refuses to fight her, which, I mean, honestly, you gotta show respect to the guy. Now, he even goes so far as to mock her by saying she needs to, quote, head home and go play with a ball or something. This absolutely pisses off Lilinet, and she draws her Zanpakuto and attacks Ukitake. Now, if I'm being honest, if somebody started talking to me like that, I'd probably react the same way. Now, none of this phases Ukitake, however, as he's able to effortlessly block all of Lilinet's attacks and even mocks her further, saying her Sero is still immature and not even as strong as a Minos. Once more, Ukitake tells Lilinet to go home, as he doesn't want to fight with her any longer, which honestly just shows the strength of Ukitake's character. After a short fight, Ukitake is able to steal Lilinet's Zanpakuto, and was able to hold on to it no matter what she tried, all the while mocking her for not putting her heart into her attacks. It's at this point that Stark calls Lilinet to his side and transforms into his true form, which forces Kiyaraku to release his Shikai. After watching the battle unfold, Ukitake decides to release his own Zanpakuto and jumps in front of Kiyaraku, redirecting a Sero from Stark right back at him. Now, this obviously, leaves Stark pretty stunned, and it takes him a minute to comprehend Ukitake's abilities. But after he does, he uses Sonido to get close to Ukitake and asks if there's a limit to how much Ukitake can absorb and redirect, and immediately tries to fire off 1,000 Sero bullets. After being saved by Kiyaraku, Ukitake, Stark, and Kiyaraku are all surprised to see the appearance of Wonder Weiss Margella, who immediately impales Ukitake from behind with his bare hand, and upon seeing Kiyaraku tries to shoot Wonder Weiss, only for Stark to shoot him in the head from behind. Both Ukitake and Kiyaraku are then seen falling from the sky, and we don't see that they survive until after Aizen's capture and imprisonment. We see Ukitake a few times in reaction shots throughout the series, but we're going to go ahead and speed all the way ahead to the 1,000-year Blood War arc, where Ukitake finally shows the true scope of what he is capable of. Now, after hearing about Head Captain Yamamoto's death, Ukitake leaves to pray at his shrine and would return to talk with the new Head Captain, Shunsoi Kiyaraku. He would state that with the state of Serete the way it is, and with the Wandenreich invading the royal palace, this was exactly the situation his Kamikake was meant for. He then says goodbye to his friend and departs to heal the wounded soldiers in Urahara's lab. Now, after Ichigo is forced to kill the Soul King, the Soul Society begins experiencing tremors as the Serete starts to break down. This actually causes Ukitake to take action, as a shadow emerges from his body as he declares that he will replace the Soul King. Urahara questions if this is possible, and Ukitake responds by taking off his robes and saying he will explain everything later, revealing the marks scattered across his back. As Ukitake begins to explain his lung disease to everyone present, as well as how his parents prayed to Mimihagi to save him, an eye emerges from the shadow and begins flying towards the royal palace. Ukitake then explains that when he was a child, his parents offered his lungs to Mimihagi to save his life, and now he was giving up the rest of his body to become the new right hand of the Soul King and gain the power to stop the Soul King's death, which basically just means that the Soul King is going to remain in kind of a state of suspended death, not really being alive but not dying, which is basically what the Soul King was already going through by being trapped in that crystal. But by giving up his life, Ukitake would stop time around the Soul King so his death would never actually occur. At least, that's what Ukitake planned for. But unfortunately, Ewok absorbs the power of Mimihagi, becoming an even more unstoppable opponent. This is the last time we will see Ukitake, but we actually get a really cool cameo from him in the Bleach one-shot, where we see his Zanpakuto come out from the gates of hell to impale Gons and drag him right back to hell. Okay, so now that we're done with the history side of Jushiro Ukitake, it's time for what you all really came here for, the power scaling. Now, obviously being a captain, Jushiro Ukitake is a master of Kido and Flash Step, and he also possesses a massive amount of Ryatsu. Even with having an extremely sick body, Ukitake was extremely durable even for a Soul Reaper, being able to stand against Head Captain Yamamoto and blocking a Sero from Lilionette with just his forearm. Now, Ukitake is also shown to possess vast medical knowledge, claiming he knew a lot about medicine after being sick his whole life. Ukitake Shikai is Sogyo no Kotowari, which were released with the command, "All ye waves become my shield, all ye thunder become my blade." After his release, Ukitake's sealed Zanpakuto slowly starts to separate as his sword becomes two thinner blades connected by a red rope with 5 talismans hanging off of them. Ukitake's Shikai has the ability to absorb and multiply the power and force of all energy-based attacks, with each talisman multiplying the force of the attack. Now, the speed with which these attacks are redirected is so fast that the blasts seem to originate from Sogyo no Kotowari itself, instead of being redirected from the opponent. Now, we never actually get to see what Ukitake's Bankai is, but there are a lot of theories, and I personally believe Ukitake's Bankai has the ability of reversal, with his Shikai having the ability to redirect or reverse energy-based attacks. It stands to reason that Ukitake's Bankai would take this a step further and actually allow Ukitake to redirect or halt any harm that would come near him. This is also backed by the fact that Mimihagi, the right hand of the Soul King, known to have the ability to stop any event from happening, was bonded to Ukitake, bonding with his soul. And as we know, a Bankai is just the true expression of what a Shinigami soul is. Alright, now that was the history and power of Jushiro Ukitake. Honestly, a massively underused character. He had one of the strongest Zanpakuto and was the embodiment of the right hand of the Soul King, not to mention one of the oldest captains in the Serite. Even with Ukitake having an incredibly weak body, he was still one of the most powerful and well-respected captains in the Gotei 13, having a Shikai that is very powerful and having the power to stop any one event from occurring. Ukitake is one of the most powerful characters in all of Bleach. Now, that's our video. Thank you for watching. If you like this, then consider liking this video, subscribing to my channel. I'll be doing a deep dive into Mayuri Kuretsuchi next, and you definitely don't want to miss that. So, see you all next time.